Did Rhaenyra Targaryen imply that she wanted her younger half-brother Aemond tortured in the aftermath of him claiming Vhagar and the ensuing fight between Aemond and Rhaenyra's children? For a long time it seemed the general consensus within the fanbase was Rhaenyra's choice of words was a clear indication that was her intent. However, ever since House Targaryen Season 1, there has been a lot more debate about what Rhaenyra's intentions actually were regarding Aemond. And I get it. It does seem very strange Rhaenyra would insinuate she wanted her own 10-year-old half-brother tortured, especially in the book, where she notably had a much better and more in-depth relationship with her siblings, where in the show it's effectively non-existent and they're all strangers to each other. Their relationship is of course very surface level, but it does exist. They do interact in a way that was never shown on screen. In this video, we're going to be analysing this event, Rhaenyra's relationship with her brother, and how this comes down to an argument of character versus the language George R. R. Martin has used. I think the best place to start is by discussing the book version of the events in question, as I feel it's a lot more compelling of a discussion than the TV version due to the fact there's not much room for ambiguity. What is often overlooked in this entire situation in the wake of Aemond claiming Vhagar is it has several different layers to it that have all impacted the mood on Driftmark at the time, namely Aemond even being bold and daring enough to try and claim Vhagar in the first place being a huge issue. Not only was it extremely dangerous for him to have done so, but from a political point of view for the Black faction, Aemond, one of Alicent's sons, claiming arguably the most important and powerful dragon currently alive, is a massive loss. But also, the way in which Aemond went about it also speaks volumes. In secret, without permission from his father. It shows the kind of man he will one day become. The combination of a person such as Aemond with the power of a dragon like Vhagar is deadly, and as we see through their actions in the Dance of the Dragons, the Blacks were correct in their fears. The fight between Aemond, Jacaerys, Lucerys and Joffrey is already a tricky situation, especially with Aemond losing an eye. That alone is going to have both the likes of Rhaenyra and Alicent in attack mode, protecting their respective children from whom they each see as the wrongdoer. The loss of Aemond's eye is a huge thing that cannot be ignored from Alicent's point of view. She cannot let it go unchallenged, and she cannot let it go unanswered. The same way Rhaenyra cannot sit back and let Aemond's actions also be unanswered and unquestioned. So while these two aspects are of course huge, the real heart of the matter comes back to the fact Aemond called Rhaenyra's sons Strongs during the fight, thus openly suggesting that Rhaenyra's sons are in fact the bastards of Harwin Strong. While we as readers by this point know that it is extremely likely this is true, with it being a very open secret within Viserys' court, with the king willing to turn a blind eye, as of course ignorance is bliss after all. The fact it is being openly called into question like this in such a public manner means that Rhaenyra has to respond in order to keep up the lie and thus keep up appearances. If she doesn't shut this issue down here and now, it sets a precedent that others can openly talk in such a way about her and her children, and the whole facade she's constructed falls down. Hell, maybe even pushing many who may have even supported her over to Aegon. There is so much more at stake in this moment than just defending her and her son's honour. It's actually important we take a moment to establish what Rhaenyra is actually being accused of in this video, and by fans in general. Because initially, readers and viewers who haven't reread the text an unhealthy number of times are rightly so not necessarily going to pick up on certain details and make these kinds of connections. In fact, it wasn't until I went back specifically looking for instances such as this that it all kind of clicked into place. There is one commonly cited example, but as you dig deeper, there are countless throughout the entire series. We're of course talking about this idea that Rhaenyra wanted Aemond tortured. When many people first learn of it, they dismiss it as a tinfoil theory, or if you want to put it in terms of House Targaryen, anti-Rhaenyra bias and propaganda. In isolation, it can and maybe does seem like that. But with the wider context and analysis of this claim of torture really does make sense and does fit well within the narrative and the build-up to the Dance of the Dragons. So we're going to take a moment to go through one very specific passage in Fire and Blood. During the confrontation between Alicent and Rhaenyra, King Viserys tried to make peace, requiring each of the boys to tender an apology to his rival on the other side, but these courtesies did not appease their vengeful mothers. Queen Alicent demanded that one of Lucerys Velarion's eyes should be put out, for the eye he had cost Aemond. Princess Rhaenyra would have none of that, but insisted that Prince Aemond should be questioned sharply until he revealed where he had heard her sons called Strongs. To so name them was a tantamount to saying they were bastards, with no rights of succession, and that she herself was guilty of high treason. When pressed by the king, Prince Aemond said it was his brother, Aegon, who had told him they were Strongs, and Prince Aegon said only, "Everyone knows, just look at them." Resentment has been building up for years between Rhaenyra and Alicent by this point, and children will often learn from their parents. The conflict between their mothers is passed down onto their children. My reading of the text is the simple act of Alicent preparing Aegon to rule sends a very clear message to her children, but what people often overlook is the rumours about the parentage of Rhaenyra's sons was always going to be one that existed with or without Alicent making her own political moves. Even before her children's birth, there was of course a lot of speculation about Laenor Velarion's sexuality and Rhaenyra's promiscuity in regards to Daemon and possibly Criston Cole. It was never going to take much for rumours about her children's parentage to spring up. It's also true there is a lot more plausible deniability on Rhaenyra's part in the books versus the TV show. Namely, that Aemma Arryn is not described in any detail. The Arryns having dark hair means it's reasonable that trait could have passed to Rhaenyra's children, even if all three seems unlikely. Rhaenys Targaryen, Laenor's mother, also has black hair in the book, adding another layer of possible genetic weirdness to all of this. But the truth is, with George R. R. Martin's very simple high school level use of genetics, is you have Rhaenyra with these perfect Valyrian traits, Laenor with these same Valyrian traits. It's going to leave people asking a lot of questions when their sons bear none of them. Additionally, keeping Harwin strong, whom all your children just happen to be the spitting image of, around you as your sworn sword only makes it easier for people to see and believe your children are bastards. Thus, even without any involvement from Alicent, there would always be gossip, and Aegon and thus Aemond would also know of these whispers. But given Alicent's vocal support of Aegon's rights, I think we can assume she did also press this matter with Aegon as well. Now, in regards to the TV show, the matter of the Strong Boy's parentage is a lot less ambiguous than even the book. In fact, the show goes out of its way to remove any other possibility. Firstly, we clearly see the relationship dynamic between Rhaenyra and Harwin when Joffrey Velaryon is born, with everyone in that room, including Laenor, acknowledging that that baby is Harwin Strong's son. But even more than that, making both Rhaenys and Aemma Arryn look traditionally Valyrian, while also making House Velaryon, while still Valyrian, have a different skin tone, effectively removes any other possibility than Harwin Strong being Jacaerys, Lucerys and Joffrey's father. This is why Aegon's line in that scene has even more impact than it does in the book. Everyone knows, just look at them, because it's true, and highlights the absurdity of the lie that everyone is forced to turn a blind eye to. Aegon knows. Corlys Velaryon knows, Rhaenys knows, Rhaenyra knows. Yes, even Viserys knows the truth. Every single person in that room on Driftmark knows the truth, but has to carry on this lie publicly because Viserys won't and physically is unable to accept it because of the sheer consequences for Rhaenyra and his grandsons should he do so. So why does all of this imply that Rhaenyra was especially suggesting that her 10-year-old brother, who had just suffered a serious traumatic injury, should be tortured and questioned? It all comes down to George R. R. Martin's very intentional use of one single word: sharply. In both Fire and Blood and the main book series, George R. R. Martin has used that word to indicate that someone is talking directly about questioning under torture, or at the very least the threat of it. In Fire and Blood, When Queen Alyssa Velaryon, the then Prince Jaehaerys, and Princess Alysanne escaped captivity on Dragonstone at the death of the Dowager Queen Visenya, King Maegor has another of Alyssa's sons, Prince Viserys, tortured to find out where his mother had gone. Of course, Viserys did not know anything, and after 2 weeks of torture, died. Maegor's exact words are as followed: chain him in the black cells and question him sharply. Ask him where his mother has gone. Another passage in Fire and Blood. In the wake of Alyssa Farman stealing dragon eggs from Dragonstone, Rhaenyra commanded Sir Merrill to question the grooms and stable boys more sharply. When the questioning proved fruitless, she relieved him of command and expelled him from Dragonstone, together with his son Sir Alan and a dozen other men she found suspicious. Oddly enough, even in Fire and Blood, there is a second example of Rhaenyra herself using this exact same language in regards to questioning. If you don't want spoilers for Season 3 and 4 of House of the Dragon, I would skip forward a few seconds. At this point, then, Queen Rhaenyra grew most wroth. Septon Eustace writes, in a voice as cold as ice, she commanded Sir Luther Largent to take 20 gold cloaks to the Dragon Pit and arrest Sir Adam Velaryon. Question him sharply, and we will learn if he is true or false, beyond a doubt. The final time this language is used in Fire and Blood makes it clear what sharply means in this context. The following is taken from the Regency period. During the Lycian Spring, no fewer than 42 persons stood accused, for those named by Lord Graceford had in turn named others when questioned sharply. Now, to the main book series. In A Clash of Kings, John 5, Jeor Mormont says the following when discussing information gained by Corrin Halfhand from some captive wildling raiders in regard to Mance Rayder, a Sun Power. What it is, our captives could not say. He was questioned perhaps too sharply, and died with much unsaid. I doubt he knew in any case. Again, the word sharply is being used to clearly indicate questioning under torture. In A Dance with Dragons, Daenerys 2, we have maybe the clearest example of what sharply means in the context of George R. R. Martin's writing, when Daenerys orders the questioning of some prisoners in the wake of a string of murders. It will be done, your worship. Would you have me question them sweetly or sharply? Sweetly to begin. Hear what tales they tell, and what names they give you. It may be they had no part in this. In the same chapter, a few moments later, after some reflection, Daenerys says the following: mercy, thought Dany. They will have the dragon's mercy. Shakaz, I have changed my mind. Question the man sharply. I could. Or I could question the daughters sharply, whilst the father looks on. That will wring some names from him. Do as you think best, and bring me names. Her fury was a fire in her belly. We later learn in a later Daenerys chapter in A Dance with Dragons the following: the brazen beasts had taken a dozen of the Harpy sons, and those who had survived their capture had yielded names when questioned sharply. Too many names, it seems. So yet again, the word sharply is being used in the same context. With all these examples, given from both Fire and Blood and the main text, George R. R. Martin uses the word sharply very clearly to indicate questioning under torture, or at the very minimum, some form of stress or duress. So when George R. R. Martin uses the word in this context with Rhaenyra and Aemond, he was very clearly telegraphing to the reader what was meant by it. So that's the fact of the text. Rhaenyra did ask for Aemond to be questioned sharply, and we as readers know what that means. But if you do want to play devil's advocate for a moment and do some mental gymnastics and lean less into factual statements and more into a reader's interpretation, there could be a way some readers might choose to interpret this scene and Rhaenyra in a different manner. Counter arguments I have seen online come down to the very nature of Fire and Blood as a telling of history rather than a point of view like the main book series. So realistically, was Aemond, a boy of 10, a prince of House Targaryen, the second son of the king, going to be tortured? No. As much of a poor king and questionable parent Viserys is, he's not going to have Aemond tortured, even if it is Rhaenyra asking it. There would be serious implications on his relationship with Alicent, Otto and House Hightower if he did so. Aemond was never really in any true danger. A king torturing his own son would be an awful look, and just bring more attention to the rumours of Rhaenyra's children's parentage. It would amplify it loud and clear. Another version of this argument I have seen that's become very popular on Reddit since House of the Dragon aired is that Rhaenyra knows Aemond will not be tortured, but she herself is also aware that she needs to keep up the appearance that her children are trueborn. If she is not seen to push hard and act in this manner against these claims, people will only question her story even more, specifically why she's not defending it. Again, since House of the Dragon began, I've also seen some people try and wheel out the old "it's green propaganda" line when it comes to anything that makes Rhaenyra look bad in Fire and Blood. In this case, claiming that Rhaenyra never did or said this, with it being added in by green supporting maesters to make her look bad. While I do believe there's some elements of Fire and Blood that have been intentionally left vague or twisted to fit the ambiguous style of kind of history book George R. R. Martin wanted to write, most of Fire and Blood can actually be taken at face value. George is very clear with the language he uses, telegraphing where these questionable and ambiguous moments are meant to be. This isn't one of them. But this whole argument falls down for one simple reason. I think there's a clear argument that Ryan Condal, the showrunner for House of the Dragon, has drastically sanitized the character of Rhaenyra when adapting Fire and Blood. Many of her questionable actions and negative elements are either given to other characters or removed in their entirety. Yet, Ryan Condal, the very man who coined the phrase green propaganda, chose to include this damning scene about Rhaenyra from Fire and Blood, with the dialogue almost taken word from the book. One of the very few times the show actually does this. You cannot deny that the choice of language by George R. R. Martin in this moment is very deliberate and intentional. When Rhaenyra says this, she's indicating that she wants Aemond to be tortured, or at the very least harshly questioned. While I do think there is some merit in the debate as to if Rhaenyra truly believed her brother would be tortured and was simply trying to keep up appearances, all that very much is subjective to each reader, where in terms of the actual facts of the text, the intentions of the word sharply is very clear.